Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've seen throughout our history that when this nation is attacked, we as this body has always come together across partisan lines. And it's been an extraordinary good thing about our nation is that we unify when we were being attacked from abroad. Well, we just came through an attack from the Russians. It was a cyber attack. And this is not at all up for debate. It's universally our intelligence community has thought that. In addition to that, you have the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate in a bipartisan way talking about the severity of the attack and the importance for us to investigate it. We have an ongoing investigation of that attack. It is being done by a special prosecutor to get to the bottom of what was going on. This was a special prosecutor appointed within the Republican administration. Jeff Sessions recused himself, one of our former colleagues, understanding that this investigation must go forward, not tainted in any way, and we have a special prosecutor moving forward with this. My concern right now is that we have an important investigation going on that has produced significant results, over 70 charges, over 20 individuals and organizations have been charged, 5 guilty pleas, 1 person sentenced, that we have a constant effort to undermine or stop this ongoing investigation, which is ultimately about us as a nation defending ourselves and holding those people responsible who attacked us. And what concerns me right now is that I am watching more moves being made that could potentially undermine this ongoing investigation. This week alone has been extremely disturbing to me. The first thing is to watch something we did yesterday, sir. This committee, and I've been some of the more impressed, in fact, before I was on this committee, I watched with pride with my colleagues across the aisle who actually knocked out 2 judges that were just unqualified for the job. It wasn't a partisan move. It wasn't an attack on the president. It was just an evaluation that those judges were not qualified. They had no experience whatsoever in their job. But yesterday, we just confirmed Benchkowski to oversee prosecutors in a criminal division, and the guy has never been a prosecutor. He's never tried a case. He's never even argued a motion. And now he's going to be an assistant attorney general who also has a shadow hanging over him. As I hope most of us know, he was involved with Alpha Bank, controlled by Russian oligarchs. And now he's put in a position that should Rod Rosenstein be removed from that position, that he could be put by the President of the United States overseeing this investigation. Now, I have a concern that I've expressed in joint unity with my colleagues across the aisle about the expansion of presidential power. It's one of the reasons why I've joined colleagues of mine on the Foreign Relations Committee to criticize the need, to talk about the need for an AUMF and the constant expansion of presidential power. And I'm very concerned about a Supreme Court nominee who has written openly, as my colleagues have talked about expanding presidential power. One of those quotes was read already, that a sitting president should have absolute discretion about whether and when he can be independently investigated. So if this is chess moves to undermine an ongoing investigation that the Senate in a bipartisan fashion says we need to get to the bottom of, we now have someone who's an assistant attorney general who is one step away from overseeing this investigation. We now have a Supreme Court nominee who could very well decide issues that are germane to this investigation, whether it's can a president pardon himself, can a president end the investigation. All of those things could be coming before the Supreme Court, and he's clearly said in his writing he has an expansionist view of presidential power in line with attempts that could be made to undermine this investigation. And so I don't understand why we're not talking about this, or at the very least, we should ask this nominee to recuse themselves from any of these matters to ensure that this investigation goes forward. I want to take a last moment, Mr. Chairman, to shift to another subject, if I can.
Go ahead.
And I appreciate the headlines that dominate in the news with what's going on in the border crisis, the Supreme Court justice. But I just came through a long holiday weekend, and I'd like to just bring up an issue that we don't seem to bring up except for after a mass shooting. You know, in communities affecting millions of people this weekend when firecrackers were going off, and I've lit my share of firecrackers, but what you hear in many communities is that when these fireworks are going off celebrating our nation, you hear calls. I got people reaching out to me this week about the trauma it causes families, because when they hear explosions like that, it brings back the common occurrence in this country of gunshots going off in neighborhoods relentlessly. You hear about parents telling you that their children dive under beds, they shaking. They evidence experiences of post-traumatic stress, but it's not post-traumatic stress. For many people living in these kind of neighborhoods, it's ongoing traumatic stress. It frustrates me that we only talk about gun violence after mass shootings when there are thousands of Americans being shot every month in this country. I live in one of those communities. In the last year alone, I've had a shooting on my block in which an individual was wounded. In the last year alone, I've had a young man murdered at the top of the street that I live in. I live in one of those communities where you do hear gunshots. I have a great mayor and a great police department that's lowering the level of violence, but all over America, millions of people live in fear of being shot every single day. And I find it deeply concerning, Mr. Chairman, that we seem to have resigned ourselves to this American reality, where this committee, since I've been on it, has done nothing, has not held a hearing about any approach to this problem with a sense of urgency. If everybody around this table lived in a community like mine, like millions of Americans do, this would be on your mind every single day. My niece lives with me in my home. There's so many ways to approach this. Can't we do something as a committee? Maybe if we want to do common sense things to keep criminals in communities like mine from so easily getting guns, can we talk about healthcare approaches to this problem? I know the lead problem alone in communities like mine that are toxic with lead, 1,000 jurisdictions in America have twice the blood lead levels in their children's blood than Flint, Michigan. That is proven to undermine the executive function in children's developing minds, that can lead to violent behavior. Maybe that's a hearing we should have. Maybe we can have hearings on the COPS program, because I know my neighborhood, Camden, others could use more police on the streets. I come back after this long recess so frustrated about knowing that people in my communities were shot, wounded, killed, and I come back around a table where there's not a sense of urgency, a resignation in a sense that this is just a part of the life of America. We can do more. We must do more. We can do something. We are not powerless against the scourge of violence in our communities. We can do things in a bipartisan fashion. At the very least, we can hold hearings, because I'll tell you this, and I don't mean this with any, even a scintilla of hope, but I know this is going to happen. We are days or weeks or months from another mass shooting, and then we're going to be sitting around this table talking about that mass shooting. But right now in America, every single day, in the aggregate, we have mass shootings. And I come back from a holiday where we should have been celebrating the 4th of July, but a holiday where millions of Americans would hear those explosions in their neighborhoods, and it would instill fear in their hearts in the greatest country on the planet Earth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.